right. All right, good evening. Welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, film critic for movieswithmark.com, filminquiry.com, and twincitiesgeek.com. And we are right in the middle of November, and we've got some big films to talk about. Now, usually, I am catching up on a lot of the For Your Consideration films that are starting to come out, and there are a few that I want to cover. But I figured I'd cover a little bit more of those next week, and that this week I would just focus on, there are the big films coming out for the Thanksgiving season. So, obviously, the two big ones we're going to talk about on stream today is Wicked, of course, based on the popular Broadway musical. We'll also be covering Gladiator 2, the sequel to Ridley Scott's historical epic about gladiators, obviously. And an extra special review. This is probably the earliest review that I've ever done on here, but we're going to review The Day the Earth Blew Up, the new Looney Tunes movie, which is actually going to be coming out in February of next year, but you're going to get a very exclusive early review on stream. A few other places have reviewed it online, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't think anyone's done a video review quite yet, so this is going to be a very, very big exclusive. So if you like more exclusives like that, and there will be more because there's a ton of films that I've got to cover this year, be sure to like this video so that more people know about these movies. I mean, obviously everyone knows about Gladiator and Wicked, but I think a lot of people would like to know about the new Looney Tunes movie that is going to be coming out next year that everyone's, getting excited for. But yeah, there's lots more films coming down the line, so be sure to like this one and subscribe to keep up to date on the latest movies. And I think I should mention too, I did tease a few weeks ago that I was going to be hosting. A few weeks ago I teased that I was doing secret movie night at the Imaging Theater over in Plymouth in Willow Creek, and I did. And if you were wondering what the film was, there it is, Blade Runner. Oh, and it was so much fun to watch the final cut on screen with a bunch of people I found out who had never seen it before, and a few people who hadn't seen the final cut on the big screen as well. I was impressed with the crowd there because there were a lot of older people who saw the film when it originally came out in 1982, so they have a better recollection of the theatrical cut. But it was a lot of fun hosting that night. I talked a little bit about the film after it was done, and we signed this poster. So if you go to the Imaging in Willow Creek, you can find my signature on one of these posters. So that's why I'm kind of tossing it carelessly off to the side there. Okay. All right. I know what you're all here for. Let's get straight into it with the biggest film that's going to be coming out this weekend. Even though it's in direct competition, we're going to be covering Wicked, obviously. Had you going there. I swear that wasn't a joke I was trying to do. I swear I was trying to click Wicked, not Gladiator. All right. Well, here we go. Let me get some water here, and we'll get set up for the big review of Wicked. You're in 3, 2, 1. So, Wicked is the theatrical adaptation of the popular musical, and it's directed by John M. Chu, who does have some experience with musicals. He did a great job with In the Heights, and he managed to have this great direction of just presenting these elaborate and stylish visuals and dance numbers that went along with the music, but also kept the theme rather firm throughout. And that's very much the case with this film, Wicked. And it would be so easy, for being based on such a popular and revered musical that it would have just such a lavish and exuberance to it that it would be easy for the themes to get lost within the glamour of it all. And to be fair, there's a lot of glamour to this. There's some great costumes. There's a lot of eye-popping visuals, and there's catchy lyrics. It's got all of that, and it feels like all that could just cake over everything that would want to be told about this tale of discrimination and trying to fit in, and all these interesting aspects to explore of the world of Oz. But that's the thing about Chu's direction. He's firm enough where he has a grasp on the material, so that he's as thematically resonant with this work as it is decadently assembled. So that there's this very organic feel to it, where it can have these incredible numbers and still, have something to say, but also still have fun with the material, where something like a mere hair flip can be funny. So, yeah, this is a tale about discrimination and political strife, and it feels especially topical now more than ever, and it isn't dulled down or softened a bit within like this fantastical this setting. So, although the film does kind of challenge that, that binary that Glinda the Good Witch would pose, like, oh, are you a good witch or a bad witch? Like, so is this a good musical or a bad? I mean, it's challenging that binary of good and bad. But in case you're wondering, yeah, Too Long Didn't Read. Yes, it is a good musical. So, and the thing that I love about this, because I'll say this right up front: I have not seen the musical. I have not read the book. But I will say, for a film that has the guts to start off with, with recollecting like the demise of the Wicked Witch of the West, it does a good job kind of like building up and making you care about that character, for letting you know right ahead of time, yes, this is going to take a dark end. So it kind of got like an uphill battle, but I think that puts like the stakes high on the film for making you care about this stuff. As kind of like as a prequel of sorts, depending on how you look at it. And I think what goes a long way with establishing that is that there's enough charisma and energy to keep you engaged with these characters despite their inevitability. So, of course, the two top talents here, you have Ariana Grande is well established as the perky and polished Glinda Upland, who's aiming to prove herself as the top talent at the magical university known as Shiz. So, challenging her status is the unexpected green student of Elphaba, played by Cynthia Erivo. And she's like the polar opposite of Glinda. Glinda's, all perky and peppy and expects everything to go her way, whereas, Elphaba is used to things not going her way. So, of course, when the lead magical lady there, Madame Morrible, played by Michelle Yeoh, takes an interest in Elphaba's powers because she has these amazing magical abilities that can be taken advantage of if only she can harness her emotions. There's a little bit of a rivalry between them, especially when they get housed together as, this kind of odd couple of sorts. So, with this pink socialite and this green outcast sharing a dorm room, they clash just as much as their academics, as they clash as much over their academics as they do for the love of this newcomer of Prince Fiero, played by Jonathan Bailey, who more or less kind of has the presence of more of like as a goal than a person. It never quite felt like he had as much agency. It more or less kind of felt like he was playing up to what these two women wanted. So like Glinda, of course, recognizes him for just, being handsome and having status, while, Elphaba takes interest in him because, he has some interest in the politics of this world. So there's a little bit of kind of a love triangle there, but I don't feel like it pays off as it. It's more interesting just to see what happens between Elphaba and Glinda, more than whether or not they'll end up with the guy, which is fair, but it does kind of make him more or less just like fodder for challenging their relationship. So, thankfully, the film is not just about that, because all is not well in the land of Oz. They're discriminating against animals, and there's corruption going on, but the film does place enough of a visual splendor in its many musical numbers to make it a place worth caring about, so that when the shit hits the fan, you start caring about it more. Much like how, that the witch is going to die, so you have to really care for her, for this character who's eventually going to become evil. And just like the way that the film is set up, it makes it a lot of fun to watch. Like, you would not think that, like, a library would be, like, the greatest place to have, a musical number. But within this, within Shiz and this whole magical world, it can be a lot of fun, where they have, like, these kind of like rotating column, like these almost kind of like hamster wheels, where they store these books, which is kind of clever. And I love how like they have these turning ladders that go between like the different parts of the wheel there. And of course that makes for a great sequence where characters are sliding up and down and going out through it. Kind of like, it kind of reminded me of like, it's like if 2001: A Space Odyssey had musical numbers in it. So yeah, just very elaborate sequence. I love the way it's staged. I love the energy that comes through it. And Glinda's song about giving Elphaba a makeover, I love too, because you would think that'd be like a very simple song where she's just dashing around the room, but the way that everything is kind of very mechanical and just pops out right on cue, it was a lot of fun to watch. Like there is an undeniable energy where even though, you know, you're kind of like sneering a little bit at Glenda for being so jealous, you do kind of like love the fact that she does want to help Elphaba, and there's an undeniable perkiness and energy that is just that I just adored. I couldn't get enough of her. So when the two leads arrive in Emerald City, I think that's like another big part of the film that you have to sell, like, because they keep talking up the Emerald City where the great and powerful Oz is going to make all the dreams come true. So once you get there, that feels like the most crucial moment, where it does have to be visually stunning and exciting, and there's got to be lots of amazing sights and dancing, and you got to feel the energy there, and it's there. It's there. I mean, John doesn't really disappoint in this aspect at all, particularly for the little cameos that they put in there as well. And I think just, I mean, I could say this, I could go over all the songs here. I won't, but just every piece of music here that they try to play up, I think just it has the perfect amount of theatrics where it did keep me more engaged and more exciting to see where this where the story was going to go next, if not for, you know, learning more about the plight of Oz and, you know, Elphaba kind of coming more into her own as a witch, then just to see what would happen within like the next musical number. Because there were, when I was at the screening, there were times where, you know, after like a high note was reached within a lot of these musical numbers, there was applause. like the film wasn't even over yet. It's just like it was just one song ending and there's already like applause going on in the theater. And I've talked to a few other critics as well, and they've said that, yeah, it's happened at their screening as well. So yeah, I mean, the musical numbers are that good. And I think perhaps it's because like this film is like, for those who don't know yet, this is part one of a 2-part film. I think the film, for being 2.5 hours, it does take its time well enough to get you engaged with these characters so that you care about them, but also it doesn't like linger so much on explaining like a lot of like the politics and the ins and outs of Oz, because honestly it shouldn't have to. If you're interested enough in this world, like, you should be able to keep up with it as it keeps going and just, you know, kind of accept some of like the magical decor and the fact that there's talking animals and just like these amazing sights in the Emerald City, and the fact that it keeps going fast enough, I think was a really good choice on John's part. But also just making sure that like the characters who are ingrained in this world were actually still interested in magic. Because that was one of my biggest criticisms of a more high fantasy, like the Golden Compass, was that it was a fantasy in this world where people were just, you know, they treated the presence of talking animals not even so much as like a mundanity, but as like an annoyance. And it's just like, well, if these characters don't care about this world, why should I? And I think just that makes it easy to love Elphaba, because she has a lot more faith in herself and, you know, and her dreams and that she can accomplish in this world. And the more that you see her magic come out in the film, the more you start, the more you start rooting for her. Which I think really worked for, you know, establishing that thematic core, which does not get corrupted by all the glitz and glamour that comes about with it. That said, the film, I do think it has like some flaws. For as much as I love the lavish setup here and the strong thematic core, there are some elements that get left by the wayside. In particular, I think it was a little bit, I think casting Jeff Goldblum as the Wizard of Oz was not the greatest choice, just because when he shows up on screen, it's just Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum. So if you're expecting him to like go a little bit more out of his element as a villain, he really doesn't, even within like the musical numbers that he's given here. Like, his presence almost kind of like grinds the film to a little bit of a halt. And I think it's only just because Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, they are so good in their numbers that when you get to someone like Goldblum, which he doesn't have much of a number, but it's just like, oh, this is not on the same. This is not. It's not clap. It's not clap in the theater worthy. I mean, like that's a really high bar, but it just wasn't working. Not to mention like a few other characters. Like, was it Nessa and Bach kind of have like a romance that it's just kind of like forced upon them, where it's just like it's one born kind of like from pity, and it would have been interesting to focus on them a little bit more, but much like Fiyero, they're kind of like pushed off to the side just enough where it feels like there's only enough time to just cover like the bullet points with these characters before we get back to, to Glinda and Elphaba to, develop more of their relationship. And I would fault the film heavier for that if it weren't for the fact that their dynamic really works. And I think just keeping up the energy and the pace of this film allows you to get more lost within the fantasy, while not getting lost within like the greater message that it's trying to tell here. So it's a very delicate balancing act, and it feels like, John was kind of trimming and pruning where he needed to here to just play up to the strengths here. And for the most part, I think it works. I think, there's enough of a story here to get you interested in Oz, but it's not played up as being too intricate or too elaborate that you get tired of it. The musical numbers arrive in, a perfect manner where they progress the story and the character dynamics, while not feeling like too much of a distraction, even though they are fun to get lost in. I love the way that they're staged. I love the costuming, just the dancing and the singing. And let's face it, the people who are going to be coming to this film, that's what's going to matter most. It's going to, just the character chemistry and just like the visuals and the energy and the music. That is what's going to count most with a film like Wicked. And on that level, I think John really delivers with a film like this. I don't think it's as great as In the Heights, only because I think that had a firmer grasp on establishing its world, and it didn't feel like it was leaving so many characters behind. Like, it felt like they were given enough breathing room here, and it feels like the side characters in Wicked are kind of scrambling, to make their presence known in this film, where it's mostly just Ariana Grande and Cynthia just taking over the screen, which it's a little bit conflicted because that's what you came for and that's what needs to work in this film, and it does. But what can I say? Like, it works well enough for what they're trying to do with this material here, where I can actually dig this version of The Wizard of Oz, warts and all. I mean, it's a far cry from the dismal fantasy of something like Return to Oz or any other weird Wizard of Oz interpretation. So yeah, as a theatrical musical, Wicked pretty much gets the job done. I just love the visuals and getting engaged in the story more than enough to that I didn't mind the side characters being pushed aside or downgraded a little bit, just because the strengths of this film, the main things that a lot of people are going to be coming to for this movie, they really do work well. So yeah, Wicked is just a fantastic musical to watch, warts and all. So Wicked is currently playing in theaters right now. In fact, tonight, there's probably going to be tons of people going tonight, so. And I think it's tracking for, what was it, like about at least 100 million. I think I've heard some estimates that it's saying it's going to be in the 120 million for the weekend, which wouldn't surprise me. So if you are going to plan to see, I would say, yeah, it's a good film. Go see it this weekend, but it's probably all booked up. So, and it probably will be coming into Thanksgiving. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to plan ahead in advance. What I'm saying. All right, let's read a few of the chat here before we get to the next film. Scorn811 says, "Hey Mark, saw Red 1 on Tuesday. I thought it was fun. I like the costumes and humor as well as the Christmas message." I've been conflicted. I missed the screening, and I was debating whether or not to go see Red 1. And I ultimately decided not, just because I'm tired of, these saving Christmas films that cast big-name talent in there, hoping that it'll, be the saving grace. Stuff like, like the Christmas Chronicles, you know what I'm talking about. But I've heard from some people that it's not too bad. And I mean, on that level, I'm mildly curious to check it out, only because I've survived through a lot of these Christmas, save Christmas movies that maybe if I went in and graded on a curve, I might be able to see the appeal, just because why would I not want it to be a good film? So I might check it out later in the future. I'll see. I have heard from some other friends I know that the film is, it's not too bad. It's fine. So I might go see it. Okay. Let's see here. Kevin Davis says international audience isn't going to give Wicked a chance at the box office. Domestic box office is going to carry Wicked for Universal Pictures, and Moana 2 is going to make money. Yeah, that's like the weird thing too, is because like everyone is like they're looking at just this weekend, because like it's going to be Wicked versus Gladiator 2, and they're treating it kind of like Barbenheimer, where they think it's like they're going to be in tough competition with each other, where it's kind of going to be equal. And I don't think it really will be, just because Wicked has a lot more of a bigger draw for it. And despite how much I like Ridley Scott, and I think a lot of other people do, and a lot of people really do love Gladiator, I don't think they're going to gravitate towards that film as much. I do hear that the film is tracking to do Gladiator 2. I do hear that it's tracking to do pretty well. Like, it is going to keep up the pace enough to be at number 2, just behind Wicked. With I think about like 80 million, I've heard from some estimates. But the film has already made like $100 million overseas. So like it's still going to be a profitable film. Which I guess is good for Ridley Scott. I mean, he hasn't had any like hugely successful films. Like he's made more prestige films, but nothing that's, you know, a bigger draw. So, but I will get to covering that in a moment. But also I did want to mention too, yeah, Moana 2 is going to make a lot of money. So the real thing to watch is going to be next weekend, where Wicked goes up against Moana 2, because Wicked is going to clean up this weekend. It's going to make at least 100 million, and I think it's going to be a real test to see how it survives next weekend, when it's directly competing with Moana 2, which is tracking to open at about the same amount. So we'll have to see how much Wicked might steal from Moana 2, because like I think that's assuming more or less that Moana 2 won't have as much competition. But given the good word of mouth that I think Wicked's going to gain, and the repeat viewings that some people are going to have come Thanksgiving, I think it's going to be like a much bigger battle. So not quite Glicked. It's going to be more like what's a dumb name for this? Wacona? I don't know. Some dumb thing like that. Scoring811 says, it does have more action, but I think I like Violent Night more. I'm talking about Red One. Well, of course. Well, Violent Night is more knowing, I think. Red One feels like it's got to be more of a family film. More action than most Saving Christmas films. Yeah, that makes more sense. Nearly one more month until Nosferatu. That's the movie I'm really anxious to see. I love Robert Eggers. Me too. That's my most anticipated film of December. And I don't want to jinx it, but I might be getting an earlier review, at least before Christmas. I'll have to see. I haven't quite confirmed it yet, but I will get to it. We will get there. All right. Sorry, I've taken more to like just doing hard copies of notes, just because I think it's a lot easier to manage my thoughts, because mostly I just kind of take like scattershot notes when I set up these streams. So yeah, having hard copies helps, and reviewing it, because a lot of these times it's just like I do these like quickly. It's like, oh crap, gotta jump on the stream and do this. So let's get everything set up here for Gladiator 2. Okay. There we go. I'm trying to organize my notes here under a mess of books. But yeah, Wicked was pretty fun. I guess hang on, I'm trying to organize it. While I'm organizing, let me tell you about the because Gladiator 2 and Wicked they're going to be popular this weekend. There was a lot of promotion going on, so they had like posters out and everything. Wicked had like a glam station for some reason. But the weird thing about Gladiator 2 was they put out like the whatever you want to call them, like tchotchkes or trinkets that they usually put out for films, and if it's something that they really want to promote, they'll come up with something special. So like for Gladiator 2, they had towels. I'm not I was initially thinking back, it's like, okay, they're handing out just like literal towels for Gladiator 2, and that like they're weird little towels. Like I think they're meant to be like stone engravings, where like they have the words strength and honor on them. I was debating why they did towels. Like I get there's 2 naval sequences in the film. Is that why? But then someone correctly pointed out, yeah, there's a lot of sweaty dudes in Gladiator 2. So obviously, yeah. So yeah, that and Denzel Washington is horny and hot. All right, we're getting to a little bit of spoilers. Okay. Let's get into the review of Gladiator. Let me get some little water here. All right, in 3, 2, 1. So, Gladiator 2 is the sequel to Ridley Scott's Gladiator, and this is kind of more of like a more of like an audience pleaser film for Ridley Scott, because I think that with his past films, like his last film that he did, Napoleon, was like a little bit more of like a prestige film. And it was lavish to look at. It was boring in some spots, and Joaquin Phoenix's performance was, I think, for some people, like it was far too muted. Like, it was a bit muted for me, but I think for the most, I liked the few scenes where it did work. But yeah, like Scott hasn't had like a big mass appeal film, so I guess it makes sense to go back to Gladiator, since people remember that film, and it's a big epic, big historical epic that people would actually be interested in because they remember the title. And I think this film kind of plays up to Ridley Scott's more audience-pleasing traits of, just the way that he stages his films with their epic nature and just the violence that he puts into them. Because I think the one line from this film that I think perfectly sums it up is when Denzel Washington's character mentions that violence is the international language. And I think that's very much true for Ridley Scott's strength as a director when it comes to these types of films. And it's not just because that, violent action films, they play much better abroad because, they don't rely on dialogue as much. And that kind of is the case here, too, with Gladiator 2 as well. But it's Ridley Scott's strengths. It's the biggest strength of Ridley Scott. And I think that's because, like, the best thing that I loved about his last film, Napoleon, was just the way that he staged the war scenes. They were violent, they were grand, they were exciting, they were vicious, they were brutal. They were the best part of that film. And I think that Scott leans more into that with Gladiator 2, but I think at a little bit of a sacrifice of like a more compelling story to go on top of it here. Because I was a little bit torn about this film at first, because it feels like this film has 2 modes. It goes between either incredibly gruesome and vicious violence, where you're watching the slaves fighting for their freedom in the Colosseum against all sorts of animals like primates and rhinos and armored guards and all this stuff, and it's brutal and it's bloody and it's violent. It's got decapitations and amputations, got all that stuff. But when you're out of the ring, a lot of the dialogue just feels kind of, it's more or less the same problem as Napoleon, but I think it's a much different problem. I think the problem with Napoleon was that it was a bit too dull and dry, and here it feels like all the action-free moments are kind of played up more for melodrama, almost as though it were a soap opera. Because, like, it just kind of feels like it's going through the motions for a lot of these moments. And I think this is mostly true for how the film stages its central hero of Lucius, played by Lucius, played by Paul Mescal. And he is the son of Maximus, who you might remember was established at the end of, like, the first film, who had to run off for, like, his safety. And here's the thing. If you have not watched the first Gladiator film, don't worry. You will not need to watch it. There actually is a very mesmerizing, kind of like painterly rotoscope version that recaps the last film in the opening credits, which I thought was kind of cool. It's like, okay, this is a good way to get you excited for the film. It recaps the last film with just a handful of scenes while the opening credits are still playing. I think this is a good way to, kind of get yourself ready for the film. The problem is, the film keeps reminding you, it keeps having flashbacks to Gladiator to remind you, like, oh, by the way, yeah, this is Lucius. He's the, the son of Maximus. So you're gonna have to kind of remember that. And in case you don't, we're gonna flash back to, scenes of Russell Crowe as Maximus, so you know the connection here. And I wish that the film didn't have to do that, because I think there would be enough interest to see what Lucius would do. I keep saying that name, yeah, Lucius or Lucius, but I think it would do the film good not to keep reminding you of that movie, because it feels like Mescal is just trying to replicate Russell Crowe's performance throughout, and I think that's mostly just because, like, he's going through the same motions that his dad did too. It's like, it feels like history is just repeating itself once again here, because he starts off the film as this warrior in Africa trying to defend this stronghold, and gets overtaken by Rome, and this Roman general of Marcus Acacius, played by Pedro Pascal, he kills his wife and imprisons, Paul Mescal's character. So Mescal is like, okay, I've got to, I'm going to fight my way to freedom, and, I'm going to get my revenge on Pedro Pascal. Now, while at the same time, while he's kind of fighting his way to the top, Marcus is now the current husband of Lucia, once again played by Connie Nielsen, who of course is the wife of Maximus. So, once she realizes that her son is alive, she's torn between her husband and her son, especially since her husband is trying to arrange an insurrection of Rome, because the citizens are tired of the two emperors here, of Geta and Caracalla, I think, yeah. And they're trying to stage an insurrection, so, she's with her husband on that front, but at the same time, she doesn't want to see her son die in the ring, and of course, eventually we'll get to that moment where the two of them will have to fight each other, and you get, like, that sense of dread and despair about, how the state is working against these people. But even when you have that emotional drive, the film, it feels like it keeps falling back on melodrama, to the point where it's like the music has to kind of pick up the slack here, because a lot of the characters are speaking more in, like, they're either speaking in two modes. They're either speaking in an expositional tone of their strategy about how they're gonna, win the next match, or how they're gonna progress through politics, how they're gonna move up, and how they're gonna stage the next part of their plan. And it's all approached with this almost kind of like maddening level of, like, stoicism that is just smothered in melodrama here, where the characters try to play up their emotions while the music swells. And I think for some people it'll be fine, because, it's just, you sit through it and then you get some cool violence later, which you do. I think you get, like, but you get, like, the violence almost as a little bit of, like, a treat, because, like, the Colosseum battles I found kind of brief, and I think that's mostly just because like, Mescal has to move up in the ranks, and he has to, like, fight pretty smart, but also pretty quickly in these matches as well. So it feels like we had a very quick dose of that violence, and we're back to, Mescal brooding, or, Pascal planning, and Nielsen just, kind of struggling with her emotions, and just, being bitter and angry and sad the whole time. And just like the Emperor duo just playing it up as being, eccentric douches, who take no note of the fact that people hate them, and they just want to rule, and they just want to feed their egos the whole time. So it feels like everything is kind of just working like clockwork, but without much surprise or extra vigor. Because it feels like a lot of the characters here are just kind of, like, standing back and letting the grand historical staging of, like, all, like, the historically accurate costumes, and, like, the naval vessels, and, like, the Colosseum, and the palace, and the city streets of all, like, the poor people, trying to struggle to make it in Rome, and, showing, like, the decay of Rome. It feels like all the actors are just, like, standing back, just stating their lines straight to the camera, doing what they need to do, and then getting out of the way so that you can appreciate all of the visuals. Now, the one saving grace for this film, though, the one character that is a lot of fun to watch, is Denzel Washington as this gladiator groomer called Marcinus. And Washington is having fun in this film. Like, it feels like everyone else is just being like stiff and stoic. Washington is playing up his role as this instigator and manipulator of everybody. He's manipulating Mescal to be like his prime gladiator, so he's kind of like, playing on his emotions and his desire for revenge. And he's also, playing up to like the emperor, saying like, hey, I'm on your side here. And just every scene that he's in, I love, because like whenever he approaches someone, he has like this feeling of great intimidation and excitement, where he flashes that grin, and you either know like, okay, he's gonna have fun and like, drink up a storm of wine and drink up a storm and just talk shit and have so much fun, or he's gonna collect and slit some throats. He's gonna do one of the two, and he is just having a ball. He is so much fun in this film. I didn't even want the film to be about Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal and Connie Nielsen or even the Emperors. Forget all that. I want to see all of Washington's roles, all of Washington's parts in this film just diced up, and that to be Gladiator 2. Because every scene he's in, he has a presence. He has an exuberance. He has an energy. He has intimidation. He even has like a horniness to him that just works for all those scenes of just like this master manipulator, that I wanted the film to be all about him. And I think the film does kind of make the smart call of more or less leaning into him more as the primary villain, which did please me. If it weren't for the fact that a lot of like the problems that I had with the first Gladiator film are still present in Gladiator 2 as well. And I think even played up to a heavier degree, where it made all the fights feel so hollow, because I wasn't caring as much for these characters. It felt like they were just stating what needed to be said in between these moments of grand carnage and violence, which, don't get me wrong, is cool to watch, but if I'm not caring that much about the characters, then what's the point? It's like, I kind of feel for Mescal in like, the basic sense of, him wanting revenge and trying to, find some like level of like satisfaction in his life after so much darkness. But all Mescal can really do in the moments when he's not just, performing all this great fight choreography is he's just like screaming out in pain for his friends who are dying. Or he's just like bitterly, stating, I'm not going to be your slave, or I want to destroy all of Rome. Or he's giving inspirational speeches about strength and honor that just came off as so banal to me the more that the film kept going on. That even with all the cool violence, I wasn't grooving on it as much, especially since, when you see like Denzel Washington, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, he's the heart and soul of this film, that anytime he's not on screen, I started getting a little bit depressed, because I just wanted that presence, because he's like the only like life in this film, whereas everyone else feels like they're stuck in a costume drama where they just have to, just stay there and, just sit down and state like the explicit emotions they have to bring about, or engage in fight sequences where most of what they do is just like screaming and yelling, and the few times where they actually do show compassion and despair, like it feels like it's kind of made to order. So your mileage might vary for this film. I think if you like the last Gladiator film, you're probably gonna like Gladiator 2, but more on a visceral level, because like on an emotional level, I didn't really feel much here, and I felt like a lot of the aspects of legacy and honor and strength just felt kind of phoned in with all like, like the speeches and, like the typical displays of Colosseum violence. Whereas, I found myself way more engaged with how Denzel Washington plays up his role of moving his way through Roman politics. So yeah, I found myself even more frustrated, because I felt like with Napoleon, there was a little bit something to explore with the character, on a level beyond just like his simplistic egotistical goals, where it feels like all the characters within Gladiator 2, save for Denzel Washington, are just on this one track without much complexity. And they're also bound by a lot of, the lore of the last film, where it feels like they're kind of trapped. And not just because Paul Mescal is a slave, just it feels like they're trapped within their specific roles and can't really veer outside of that, or else they would get in the way of like all the staging of like this Roman drama and action epic. So yeah, this is not Ridley Scott's best film. And honestly, I would probably have to go back and watch Gladiator to see like if there was. I felt like there was a little bit more emotion in Gladiator, but within Gladiator 2, I wasn't digging on it, and it made the violence and like all the Colosseum fights like not feel as exciting as I would like them to, which sucks because like the staging to them is really good. I like the little naval sequence they have where Mescal is, he's captaining his ship that's gonna destroy this other ship for like a coliseum of people cheering on. That's a cool visual, but just I wish I could care more about his character, and I just didn't, because it felt like he's locked into this role and he's not really going outside of his element here. So yeah, Gladiator 2 is really not that great of a film, with the exception of Denzel Washington. So yeah, Gladiator 2 will be playing in theaters this weekend. Oh, I put my voice on there. And let me get a drink and I'll read the chat here. All right, so what do you have? Scorn says, nearly one more month. No, wait, I already read the Nosferatu thing. Did I get a chance to see VHS Beyond? I did, and I reviewed it on stream, so you can go check out. And I believe I also wrote a review on movieswithmark.com if you want to check it out. And it's not bad. It's not as good as VHS 99, or was it or VHS 85. But it's kind of a mixed bag, because I think I loved like about like half of the entries in that anthology. Although I don't think it's much of a surprise that like the one entry that I loved the most in that film was the ending spaceship. The one about the woman who gets trapped in the spaceship, and the nanomachines keep rebuilding her, except they can't rebuild her quite right as she's launched into space. That was a really good short. It's worth watching, I think, just for that one. It's worth watching just for that one because of the idea, and the opening one where the police task force has their dash cams on as they're going in to fight an alien. That is also a really good one that I loved. All right, let me get notes up here for the Looney Tunes movie. This is going to be a good one. All right. It was a good story. I don't think I'm alone in saying this here. I think the weakest one was the skydiving one, where they hit a UFO and then they get to the ground and they have to scramble around from the aliens. I think it's just because it reminded me of that other entry from was it from VHS 2, and just that the aliens were not that interesting. Like, even though they got like like vagina faces, and they shoot lasers that melt people's heads, it wasn't that good. But they can't all be winners. But it's more surprising, that most of them ended up being really good, All right. We got one up for this one here because we're gonna review a Looney Tunes movie. One that I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to. Points for not killing the dog in VHC. I think that's an easy way to get points. Like, if you have a horror film, don't kill the animals, Which I don't know how people will feel about that taxidermy episode. A taxidermy entry from VHS Beyond, but your mileage may vary. All right, let me get my notes all set up here. Okay. Whoa. I just almost knocked the stack of screeners over there. I'm so glad that my webcam is not looking down on the floor right now, because it is a mess. screeners and DVDs and press notes. Okay, enough of that crap. Let's get to the Looney Tunes movie. All right, here we go. With The Day the Earth Blew Up in 3, 2, 1. So The Day the Earth Blew Up is a Looney Tunes movie. And actually, this is the first Looney Tunes movie that is fully animated. Because like the past Looney Tunes films, because there have been Looney Tunes movies that have gone to the theater, but they've either been one of two types of films. They've either been they've either been like an amalgamation of like different types of Looney Tunes shorts that have just kind of been, chopped together for the big screen with some original animation included, or they've basically just been Space Jam or like Looney Tunes Back in Action, where they mix the cartoons with live action. And so this is the first film that's actually fully animated. And what I love so much about The Earth Blew Up is that this is a film that understands the great appeal of Looney Tunes. Because I think with like the past Looney Tunes films, like with Space Jam and Looney Tunes Back in Action and Space Jam: A New Legacy, is that all of those films felt like they were trying to be too meta with Looney Tunes. Because more or less what those films seem to be trying to say is that like the Looney Tunes might be like over the hill and they gotta like prove their worth because like, they're too old, do kids still even like Looney Tunes anymore? And they kind of gotta, prove that they're still funny. And that's not as like, I get like the meta nature they're going for with those types of films, but it's not as interesting as just, the Looney Tunes shorts themselves, which is the brilliance of them was that you could take these characters, throw them into different types of scenarios and make a rather funny series of gags from it, and maybe even a story that you would care about. And that's what the people behind this film, which a lot of like the screenwriters and the director, Pete Braungart, realize that's how you make a good Looney Tunes film. It's not just looking back on their legacy and asking what they're worth, but just trying to stage a good scenario for the Looney Tunes to, have their fun in. And that's because a lot of the people who worked on this worked on the new Looney Tunes shorts that have appeared on HBO Max. So there's a great simplicity to this film because it's mostly just a story about Daffy and Porky. It's Daffy and Porky as a great duo, and they have fantastic chemistry. They're both voiced by Eric Bauza here, and this is Daffy Duck played up as like the eccentric prankster who does the woohoo woohoo as he runs around with a mallet just smashing things, having too much fun and going crazy. While Porky is more of like the straight man just trying to maintain order and kind of work his way around Daffy. And this film does a great job playing up this dynamic. And I should stress, this is just like their story. In the same way that like the classic Looney Tunes shorts would just focus on like one or two characters and make them the central focus. That's very much the case with the Day the Earth Blew Up, because it's placing these characters in this scenario where it's basically kind of like a 1950s sci-fi B movie. Because the entire plot is that, well, it starts off with Daffy and Porky trying to find money to repair their house. It's the house that they grew up in because apparently they've been adopted brothers, I guess. They've been taken in by like this farmer called was Farmer Jim, I think. And, so the house means a lot to them and they want to take care of it. So they end up getting a job at a gum factory in which they meet Petunia Pig, who is voiced by Candy Milo. And of course, Porky falls for Petunia. And then of course, his relationship with Daffy is threatened because Porky just wants to maintain a job and Daffy is terrible at maintaining jobs, as the film demonstrates in a rather hilarious montage of gags here. But then, their problems worsen when they realize that the Earth is under attack by a mysterious alien invader who is transforming all the gum so that anyone who chews it will be transformed into a zombie, more or less. Like a zombie controlled by like the gum in their mouth, which is played up with like great grotesqueness. I love the fact that these people who like chew the gum become zombies. They don't just, it's not just like the typical cartoon zombies where like their eyes glow and they just stagger around and like they drone with like their voices. I love the fact that like the gum in their mouth like spawns eyeballs and it takes on different mutations and forms. Like at one point, Daffy, Porky, and Petunia are fighting this grotesque gum monster of like teeth and eyeballs, and it just mutates its shape, and it feels like, wow, like I was surprised. This actually feels, yeah, like kind of like The Blob, or like pretty much like a 1950s sci-fi B movie, and like they are playing it up very much as kind of like as like an ode to those types of films, but also as an ode to, you know, like the hilarity of Looney Tunes in general. Because like I said, there is a lot of faith in what can make Looney Tunes work here, and they realize it's not through just trying to like update the Looney Tunes as much. There are some updates, like it's not like a film that's, you know, strictly in the 1950s. It's staged like the 1950s. Like you look around at all the human characters and they're all wearing like the suits and the hats and the way that the society is framed. You're like, is this the 1950s? But then you see like smartphones, and one of the professions that Daffy tries is to be an influencer at one point. So it's very much a film that kind of like takes its style and its ode. Takes its kind of like style and its inspiration from the 1950s, but still has enough faith to make a film that can take place in the present and still feel like a cartoon that can work on its own merits, rather than, like I said, trying to update, you know, prove the worth of the Looney Tunes here. And I also love the fact that the alien invader is played up with great eccentricity by Peter MacNicol, who you might remember from Ghostbusters 2 as the guy who kept saying, like, it's Vigo, or you might remember him as, like, X the Eliminator from Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. And Peter is very much in his element here. He is having a meal out of this role. His voice is high, he's eccentric, he's angry, he's frustrated, and there's a rather funny twist with this, with how he's staged in this film, where I just got more excited to see him every time he's on screen. So the way that I mean, first off, I gotta compliment the 2D animation here. It's gorgeous, it's lavish, it feels like it has like a lot of expression, where it doesn't feel like it's stilted. I think that was probably my biggest concern with a film like this, because when you look at like I looked at like Space Jam, and it felt like the cartoons weren't playing up to a lot of their strength. It felt like they were trying to be too much on model to fit in within like a live action world. But without that, with, you know, being entirely bound within 2D animation here, it's highly expressive and very experimental and detailed at several points. In particular, I really love this sequence in the gum factory where Porky and Daffy are just starting to work, and they're starting to get into the groove of it. And as they're working, they start getting into like this rhythm where the sounds that they're making kind of reflect you might remember a familiar music choice from Looney Tunes was like Powerhouse. You might know if you don't know what the music I'm talking about, it's that song goes da 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 da. They do have that kind of music that comes in there, and then they proceed into this rather kind of rather beautiful experimental music video that deviates from the style of the film and kind of takes on this kind of like industrial type of artistic style. That was just fun to get lost with them for just like a minute there, just to have like this cool display of visuals for like this familiar Looney Tunes song, and just have like a little detour like that, and then just get back to all like the skits and the gags and all like the slapstick and the weirdness of the sci-fi B-movie setting, and just have fun with it. And I think what's even more surprising about film, because like, you know, sure, I expected some funny slapstick, I expected some fun chemistry between Daffy and Porky, I expected some great 2D animation, and I even kind of expected them to play up the sci-fi B-movie angle. What I wasn't expecting as much was that the script that they have here actually kind of has some heart to it. You really do start feeling for the plight of Daffy and Porky as this film keeps going on. That you really do feel for their friendship and how they stick to each other. And I think I should clarify, when I say that, I don't mean that the film will just like stop dead in its tracks so that these characters can have like a tearful admission, and it doesn't feel like that phoned in moment from Space Jam: A New Legacy where Bugs is on his deathbed and has to like say goodbye. Like, it doesn't feel as hollow like that. And I think the best the best scene that sells that in the film is like there's a moment where Daffy and Porky are both crying over each other about realizing they weren't being the best of friends to each other. But if you're going to have a scene where they're crying, the animators play it up so you can have fun with it as well. So, like, if you're going to have a moment where the characters are crying, you're going to see, like, Daffy's eyes turn like the Hoover Dam and burst open, and you're going to have Porky crying out rivers where, like, there's salmon swimming between it. It's just all those wonderful little artistic details that just add so much to a story that can still be emotional and still, like, play as a homage to those those old sci-fi films. I think it's just like a perfect marriage of just everything that makes Looney Tunes great and just expanding it into a feature film to show to the world that no, you don't need to retool Looney Tunes. You don't need to do something like Lunatics where you turn them into like anime action heroes. You just need to have a firm enough story, a strong enough script, a good enough dynamic between the characters, and you could turn what is essentially a 6-minute Looney Tunes short into a feature film and not make it feel elongated by finding all this fun stuff to do with the characters. So yeah, like there's a lot of pressure on The Day the Earth Blew Up to live up to being the first fully animated Looney Tunes movie where I didn't want to just look back on this film and say, oh, well, at least it was the first of its kind and it tried that and it got out there. No, this is a film that can stand on more than just like the medium that it's trying to like, push into the theaters. It actually, it really surprised me how much everything came together here so beautifully, and it's just fantastic to watch unfold. So yeah, The Day the Earth Blew Up is very much the Looney Tunes film that everybody has been waiting for. Just everyone put a lot of effort into this film. It works so well. This film has been long delayed, and I'm so glad that it's finally going to be coming out soon because it deserves to be seen. Like this is the heart and soul of what makes Looney Tunes so great. This is why Looney Tunes has, why it was in reruns for so long, because it had fun skits with great characters. And if you put the right script in front of these characters with directors and screenwriters who care about this material, you can make something beautiful. And that's exactly what The Day the Earth Blew Up. It's everything that I wanted a Looney Tunes movie to be, and so much more. I love this movie so damn much. So, The Day the Earth Blew Up will be playing in American theaters starting in February. I believe they had like a firmer date for like mid-February, but yeah, it's going to be coming out in February. So mark your calendars for when that comes out next year, because you are definitely not going to want to miss it. Okay, so let me get some water here after we blew through those 3 big films. Okay. Alright, shoot, I was going to do a recap. Before we get to that, let's recap the films that we reviewed on today's show. We reviewed Wicked, a theatrical adaptation of the hit Broadway musical. John M. Chu's direction, John M. Chu from In the Heights. He does a pretty damn good job trying to bring this story to the big screen. I kind of say that having not read the book or seen the musical. But I was delighted by this musical and its lavish numbers. I was a little bit dismayed that some of the characters were pushed off to the side. I don't think Jeff Goldblum worked as well, but for Ariana and Cynthia in the lead roles, they really do work it. There's some great music, some great dance sequences, and it was great to get lost within that fantastical world. I also reviewed Gladiator 2, Ridley Scott's sequel to the previous Gladiator film. It's got some very bloody and gruesome fight sequences, but there's a lot of melodrama in between all that just did not work for me. It did not get me more engaged and more excited for the fights. The only good thing about this film is Denzel Washington making a meal out of his performance. That's the reason to see it. Even though I know a lot of people will be going to see it for the violence, but the melodrama in between, which does go on long, it goes on about 2.5 hours, made this film a bit of a slog to get through. And finally, I reviewed The Day the Earth Blew Up, the new Looney Tunes film that's going to be coming out next year. It has a lot of heart, a lot of charm, a lot of great slapstick to it, and and it pays great tribute to past Looney Tunes shorts, classic shorts, as well as 1950s B movies, including stuff like The Blob. It was a lot of fun to watch this film, and I can't wait to see this with the crowd. You're going to love this film when it comes out in February. Trust me on this. It's a lot of fun. So, if you would like to read reviews of all the films I reviewed on today's program, you can find them at movieswithmark.com. I will also be posting these the video reviews later on this channel, probably by next week. And if you would like to keep up to date with the latest in films, like The Day the Earth Blew Up, and hear about what's going to be coming out next month, be sure to like this video so that more people know about this Looney Tunes movie, and subscribe to this channel to keep up to date with the latest films. Okay, so yeah, it was only 3, but there were 3 that I wanted to really put a lot of work into, since there were 2 coming out this weekend and 1 coming out next year. So of the 3 that I reviewed, obviously I loved The Day the Earth Blew Up the most, but Wicked I did love as well. So if you can, try to get out to see it at the theater this weekend. Maybe Thanksgiving. I mean, it'll probably be packed in the theaters this weekend, but if you can, try to see it. It's fun. It's a pretty fun film. I love the musicals. I would say, be prepared for people to clap during musical numbers, because it happened at my screening, and apparently it happened for other critics at their screenings as well. So be mindful of that. And be sure to mark your calendars in February to watch the Looney Tunes film, The Day the Earth Blew Up. I'm really looking forward to this film. Yeah, the only reason that film is coming out too is because another distributor picked it up. So that's part of the reason why I was able to see the film so early. So yeah, looking forward to that. So what do we got coming up? Well, next week, I think either Tuesday or Wednesday, I will be back on stream to review the latest film coming out for Thanksgiving, Moana 2, obviously. I don't think I need to introduce that one much. Another sequel to Disney's hit film, Moana. We'll see how it stacks up. And I think it's going to be a big box office hit, though, as everyone has estimated. And what other films do I review? I think I will also be reviewing some other films coming out, including the Piano Lesson, the new drama coming to Netflix, and a film that I just watched today, and I want to get around to covering, is Juror Number 2, the latest Clint Eastwood film. I was a little bit hesitant to cover it just because it's... Here's the thing. Juror Number 2 came and went from theaters in like a week or two, so it's going to be hard to recommend it, so I might wait, but I think definitely I'm going to review it next time. So look forward to next time. I'll be reviewing Juror Number 2, The Piano Lesson, and Moana 2. So that'll be coming up on Thanksgiving. I'll lead through some of the chat here. Why does Moana need a live-action remake, though? That's my big question. I think you know why. Money. It'll make money. It'll probably make money. And that's the thing. People say, like, I don't know if it'll make money. It's like, dude, like the live action Lion King made $1 billion. I mean, it'll remain to be seen whether or not like more of their live action stuff will pierce through. I think the real test will be this Christmas when Mufasa comes out. I think if Mufasa can't do the numbers, I think Disney might scramble. I think at this point it's too late for them to pull out of Moana for their live action film, and probably like for their Stitch film as well. But if Mufasa doesn't pull out great numbers, which it's tough at Christmas time to pull that out if you have big competition. And the thing is, I would say that Mufasa has a chance of being a huge box office hit because usually around Christmas time, there aren't a huge amount of like big family films, but it's going to be competing against Sonic 3. So, and those films do make money. So there's going to be some competition there where it might push Mufasa down. So it'll remain to be seen. But yeah, the reason they're making live action Moana is for money. That's why they're doing it. They've done live action remakes of their past films and they have made money. I'm not saying they're good films, because most of them are not. But they do make money. And I think, and the thing is, like, some people are, like, baffled by that, because they're like, how did Beauty and the Beast make $1 billion, and how did The Lion King, how did these live action films make $1 billion? It's like, because people go to them because they play up to the nostalgia. That's the primary reason. And I think like the thing is, people need to realize this, because like I think there's a bubble that a lot of people live in when it comes to like looking up these types of films. Like there are people who will go to a film just for nostalgia. That is like the primary reason. Like if you talk to most people about what films they're looking forward to, which films are coming up they're most excited for, they're going to answer a sequel. Like if you talk to someone who's big into video games, you tell them which film is coming up next month they're most excited for, it's probably going to be Sonic 3. If you talk to like Disney nuts, what film they're looking forward to coming up next, probably Moana 2. It's all sequels. Because that's what resonates. That's what gets people talking. That's what gets announced early. That's what people get excited for. That's what happens. I'm kind of glad that I hope that there's more excitement for Moana 2. Not Moana 2. Nosferatu, because that's the film I'm most excited for. And although yes, it's based on previous material, but it's not the Robert Eggert film, and it doesn't look like it's directly trying to replicate past Dracula films. So looking forward to Mortal Kombat 2 myself. Well, there you go. That's what I'm saying. People like think about all the films coming out next year. Think of all the films coming out next year. Which films are you looking forward to? And which of them are not sequels? Which of them are actually going to try to do something that's not just continuing on with something that you've seen before, that it's going to be a sequel? And don't say The Day the Earth Blew Up, because I just told you about that. I just told you that film's good, so don't even try that. There are some genuine original films out, but like I said, you have to look for them. They're not as heavily advertised. They're not as talked about as much, sadly. So yeah, that's how they come about. That's the primary reason. Love Hers. That's true. Although wasn't there I think there was like another one coming out, wasn't there? Oh god. Oh, there was one that was lingering on my mind. What was it? Was it the latest one from Oh no, wait. Sorry. I was thinking of Luca Guadagnino's Queer. But that's actually coming out next month. I don't know why I thought that was coming out in January. It might come out in January. There is another like a little. I was going to review this later, but I'll spoil a little bit of it here. There actually is there's an award-winning anime movie coming out in January called The Colors Within, and it's about 3 teenagers who want to start up a band, and it's really sweet. It's really sweet and wholesome. It takes place at like a Japanese Christian high school. And it's actually it's rather adorable. I think it meanders here and there, but I think the visuals and the personality and charm are enough to recommend it. So that's one film I'm looking forward to. The monkey, yeah. I'm kind of interested in the monkey. Bambi the Reckoning. Jesus. I don't know with that. Yeah, because I was thinking, because that's part of like the childhood horror universe. Because they're gonna cross that over with like what, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and then what, like a Steamboat Willie is gonna come in there too, since that's public domain as well. And then they'll all team up in Childhood Horror Avengers, and it'll be awful. I keep knocking the damn screeners. Freaking hell. We'll get to covering more of them. So yeah, if you want to stay up to date on the latest movies, again, I'm repeating myself with call to actions, but like this video so that more people know about the Looney Tunes movie. I'll post these reviews, these video reviews next week, but you can read my written reviews and my complete thoughts over on movieswithmark.com. I'll be back next week to talk about Moana 2, Juror Number 2, and the piano lesson. So until next time, everybody, have a good one. Oh, and happy holidays. I will do one more stream before Thanksgiving, but yeah, have a good one.